What's happening now is we're introducing the main act.
Oh, fan-daffy
So I'm going to ask the crowd to put their hands together and give a very warm welcome to Caitlin
Hayward.
I'm going to be rude to start with and ask if someone can get me a big glass of water, because I got a thimble of water earlier, which was lovely, but it wasn't in the thank you. Cool. Hi, I'm Caitlin, HT, I'm from Brighton. I'm really sorry I missed the beginning of this amazing evening. We were driving in the traffic, desperately trying to get here, but I'm sure it was amazing. I have like a note of things to remember to say before I start, because I get forgetful as soon as I get on stage. So first thing is a lot of my poetry talks about sexual violence, police brutality, a lot of really grim stuff. I'm never going to be offended if you need to leave the room or you need to take some space, or if you want me to stop, just yell at me, that's fine. But seriously, I don't want to upset anybody. These are important things, but they're also hard to listen to. I'm going to be swimming soon, this is amazing. The other thing is there's some little cards on the table by the door that have my details on, so if you're interested in hearing anything else when I eventually actually read a poem, then you can pick one of those up. And then I'm going to say thank you now, because it doesn't really fit with any of the other things I'm saying. So I want to say thank you massively to you guys for putting this on and for inviting me. Thank you to Sarah, who I've known for years and is like the best person ever. And thank you to Vicky for driving me here, and for my little fan club that came wearing matching t-shirts for a different band, but you know, still. And thank you to Ruby, because that was really awesome, and I don't know how to match it, but I will at least attempt by starting with a poem called Don't Put Chemicals in Your Cunt. Your pussy doesn't have to smell like apple blossom. Your frou-frou doesn't need to smell like fucking fruit. You don't need femme fresh on your flesh, you don't need to douche down there, you need to listen to your body and beware lest the advertisers win. They hate the skin you're in, and they propagate that hate so they can profit. You need to drop it, like it's hot. Like they've burnt the hand that feeds them, because the power's in your hands, reaching into purses to purchase and purchase and purchase products whose only purpose is to change you, to rearrange you to their beauty myth. Well, they can kiss this cunt goodbye, because I won't buy it. We'll never fit into the photoshopped bodies they pin to our walls like butterflies, flightless. We need to fight this. They try to break us so they can break even, but we can beat them if we all play a part. We'll take spray cans to their billboards and make art. We'll start riots over diet plans. We'll stand with our demands against their hate. We won't wait for progress. They'll just have to catch up. We'll raise our loving cup to ourselves and raise hell when they tell us we're ugly, because that's not a word that we know. We'll see beauty blossom and grow from the corners of eyes and the meeting of thighs and the meeting of minds and the hundreds of kinds of women we know. We'll show the world that girls can have cunts and cocks, Mohicans and frocks. We're fat, we're thin, but the skin we're in is thick. We've got quick wits, hairy pits, big breasts, flat chests. We're readers, we're writers, we're doctors, we're fighters. We're judges, we're dancers, we're teachers, we're chancellors. We're in your schools, in your books, on your streets, in your home. So what if we don't smell of roses? We're perfect, so leave us alone. You asked for angry women, so you know. Oh, another one now. So this next poem probably needs a little bit of explanation. It's called Grace, and I wrote it for one of my friends, Grace Petrie, who's a kind of activist performance singer.
Oh my god, I saw her last week.
She's amazing.
Amazing.
So I wrote this when she was going through a period where she was really promoting the Green Party, and she'd previously been very Labour. And it's a lot more boring than this poem will hopefully be. But she had a lot of trouble from a lot of the kind of old school guys that were saying that she was going to be the sole reason that Labour didn't flourish and thrive. And while she is now supporting Corbyn, and I am reluctantly so, I think this poem is still very relevant in terms of that old guard that remains sadly very strong. It's called Grace. There's a woman on the platform singing songs to save her life, about a Tory government whose bigotry is rife, and the audience are laughing as she adds a lighter touch because if she told the honest truth, she knows they'd all find it too much. See, she's living in a country where she's worried for her neck. The audience think clapping is the way to show respect, but in the voting booths, their crosses might as well be genuflecting to the fascists in tuxedos, to the pen that writes the cheque, to the pigs with bloodied sticks, and to the fear their shields reflect. So she's singing in the function room and they can feel her fervour, and they're slapping themselves on the back just because they came and heard her, and they're sitting there remembering when they were in their prime, wear their union badge with honour and ignore the pass of time. Because those days gone by were hopeful, but that isn't true today. The parties can't be told apart, all different shades of grey, and the whips from left to right all seem to have the same idea of a surveillance society that operates on fear. So the audience are clapping like they're doing her a favour, but later they'll berate her for not advocating labour. They'll say lesser of two evils. They'll say they're the ones to save us. They'll say when your party splits the vote, don't turn around and blame us. Because they can't see past their badges to the fat cat union bosses, and they can't see past the pledges to each lie and broken promise, and they can't see past the past to find a way to forge a future. They don't care for asking questions, they just want the lies they're used to. Still, the woman on the platform lays her heart out on the stage, and reminds me of the moments in my own life when, betrayed by old-school lefty brothers, I just raised my voice up louder. So she sings to break their silence and to wake the minds around her, and she'll try her very best with all that she can give them. And if after all that they don't change, just wait, because we'll outlive them. Now that I've made a scene about water, I should probably drink it. Yeah. Okay, so I planned my set list in the car on the way here, and it's ended up being really relevant. This is one of the poems that one of my friends asked me to perform. Vicky asked me to read it. It's called Dogs. It's about catcalling, and so it fits very nicely with what you were saying, although it entirely contradicts it. So hopefully you'll enjoy it. She said it's catharsis. I've started barking at strangers. It's not as strange as you'd think. She just made the link between dogs and catcalls. Said when they whistle as she walks whenever night falls, she'd rather growl in their face than remember her place. She said, I'll mess with their heads because I just can't play dead anymore. She's sure it will hound their minds when she's gone. Something in their normal game went wrong, like a roll went too far and the lads in the car find her chasing it. And the guys on the street watch her squat at their feet, marking territory as they flee in terror. We know, really, who has the power here. But maybe this is the place to start. If you treat us like dogs, we will bite. We will bark. We're not puppies to paw at. We don't want your bone. We're guard dogs. We're savage, and even alone we can scare you guys shitless, your savagery shown barefaced back at you. God. Imagine a world where this idea has grown, and a movement of barking women was starting. That is a revolution I want to part in. Feral girl gangs in packs with their claws painted black, and they're out on the prowl and they're poised to attack. How long would it take before guys got the knack of looking at women and biting back whistles and smart-ass remarks? How many bites? How many barks? Would we get there before the man chose to crack down, setting curfews and banning girl packs from the town? Would we get there through scaring them, shouting them out, till they caught themselves moving to whistle and shout and felt an unusual and lingering doubt? Till they checked past their shoulder with fear because they knew that catcalling was a really fucking awful thing to do, and their bros wouldn't want to hang out with a guy who brought out the canine in girls walking by. After time, perhaps girl packs would retract their claws, return to streets solo because they knew for sure that they were untouchable. Unwritten laws that said, brother, don't go there. We've been there before and we learnt the hard way that girls deserve more. A utopia, maybe, and a strange road to get there, anthropomorphism turned on its head till men learned there are ways to treat women like people. Groundbreaking, right? So when she tells me her bark is becoming a bite and she says it's the way she walks safely at night, I hear her and lock that thought tight in my heart. Wonder if this is how to claim streets after dark. When a man's blunt remark leaves you shaken with fright, know that this is the moment. This right here is the start. We'll show them our bite is much worse than our bark. I think my favourite thing about that poem is it's inspired by a friend telling me that she literally did do that to a man that was catcalling her, and he was terrified. Which is just, I wish I'd been there. Amazing. Okay. It's really weird trying to choose the kind of poems to read at this time in the world. Like, I've got a lot of really angry poems and a lot of really sad poems and a lot of like, oh, that's nice poems. And I don't know, everything's pretty shit at the minute, so a lot of what I've chosen is saying just that. And this is something that I wrote quite recently in response to the massacre that happened in Orlando. For those of you who don't know, somebody went into a gay club in Orlando and murdered 49 people. I've called the poem 50. At the time, I hadn't realised that when the newspapers were saying 50 people had died, they were counting this disgusting human being in with all the people that he'd killed. Personally, I feel like 50 still works for me because I think a part of the community died really that day. And again, I'm writing about a very specific event, but tragically there's so many specific events that this could be speaking to, so hopefully it speaks to you. It's called 50. I want you to write the names of 50 people you love. Write each name out in full and read them all aloud. Now, one by one, cross them out. Feel that sense of momentary loss from just one thin black line 50 times. Feel the scale of it, the splitting in two. Sometimes you need to put tragedy in your own terms to comprehend it. We cannot always truly feel statistics, but lives. Lost lives is something we all know the fear of. I want you to write the names of 50 people you love on 50 envelopes. Seal with a part of your heart. Write, though I have no God to thank, I am thankful for you. Write, my head is held high in the prayer of you, the God-given gift of you, faithful, faithless. Know that once the envelope is sealed, there is no telling the difference. Just 50 pieces of heart mailed out in gratitude. Maybe some of your 50 are no longer here. Write to them still. We will be writing Orlando's 50 for the rest of our lives, numbers gradually becoming names to be branded on our collective consciousness, names we cannot even say with certainty, for fear of birth names used again in death, for fear of a misremembering. We will be writing 50 of our chosen family, who sought shelter and pleasure in the arms of the community. 50 reminders that we can never hold you close enough to keep you safe from harm, that we can never be held close enough to be at ease, that even the walls and doors of our safe spaces can't keep the violence out. 50 reminders that even when the murder's motive is clear, the media will blink and miss it. That even when a Latinx night at a gay club is targeted, we won't hear about race or sexuality on our front pages. Just the loudest of voices, railing against terrorism, declaring an attack on people having fun. Count out every one of your 50. Refocus away from the raging racism of the masses, but do not blind yourself to the racism that rooted this horror, that allows it to continue. 50 of our community killed, and they want to talk about the right to go dancing as if they have ever considered the chance to dance as anything but an inevitability. But there have been cops killing us in clubs for as long as our feet have found dance floors. 50 reminders to the straight, cis world that we, their queer peers, their other, are still at risk. A reminder that we already know by heart, by breaking hearts. I want you to write the names of 50 people you love and know that there are those in Orlando whose whole list just went up in flames. Burn your lists at vigils. Scream them out from rooftops. Wrap each name in the knowledge that, if nothing else good can come from this horror, at least, across the world we are saying enough. We are saying, see this? This is the fear of the everyday for so many of us still. We are saying we cannot turn away from this or from the roots of this, the fruits of bathroom bills, of killer cops and broken justice, and we will do everything we can to never have to write another list like this again. Okay, back to the angry, away from the angry sad. I mean, this is also quite sad. Sorry, there's a theme emerging, probably. This probably also needs a trigger warning for self-harm and suicide, so that comes in here quite a lot. It's called For Fuck's Sake. Don't you hate our fucking language? I mean our language about fucking. Every single term we have, every word is fucking lacking. And though the dictionary is expanding when it comes to sex, we're slacking. So tell me, what does virginity mean? You've never touched a dick, so your hands and soul are clean and unicorns will meet you in the glade. Babe, you've been betrayed. And I think it's time we had a little chat. We'll skip the euphemisms, there isn't time for that, let's just talk openly. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. But first, let's just talk about talking, because that's just not something we do. We've learned to be scared of our feelings and we've made our own bodies taboo. So if we are about to fix language and make something that does right by us, we need to first learn to use what we're given. Only then can we start to discuss how the whole fucking system has failed us. Because there's no words to describe who we are, and what we like, and what we've done, and what we're doing, and what's just right, and what's a little too far. So if you were a so-called virgin, what do we call you now you're not? There's no nice word for girls who screw, especially girls who screw a lot. So we find ourselves playing the blame game, and shame leaves scars on young women's arms, and when whiteness and purity are synonymous, slut is the butt stubbed out on my black sister's palms, the harm a word can do to the body is palpable. Stigmata of the stigma of black skin, sexuality assumed but still belonging to the gaze of God or any other him. And they say, witch hunts are so 17th century, as they pass her name around the school at break. Call her the town bike, hand out a photo that she never gave permission to take, and they say, we were only teasing, no hard feelings, till they find out that she is gone for good. And no, they didn't build a bonfire in the schoolyard, and you hope they'd take it all back if they could, but a word alone can set a soul on fire. And their sideways glances added to the blaze, so they didn't need to build a funeral pyre to break her down. No, they found other ways, and they watched her burn, and they still don't learn. And they watched her burn, and they still don't learn. And we watch her burn, and we still don't learn. Where were we? You were telling me what virginity really means. Come on. Come clean and confess, you just have to guess like the rest of us. And isn't it verging on the ridiculous when virgin means different things to each of us? And who am I to talk? I was a virgin who led a slut walk. But I'd had my fingers in plenty of pies, and I'd had more than one in mine, and I'm fine with that. Well, more than fine, but that's a story for another time. The point is I didn't know how to define who I was. So perhaps you can explain. Does it have to be painful? Bloody sheets where your bodies meet and you stand in the shower for hours telling yourself you feel different now, changed, ignoring the strange twist of disappointment at the tip of your tongue. Do you have to come? Must it be with the one, or can you do it alone? Does it still count as sex if it's over the phone? When he asks if you're a virgin, what do you tell him? Do you wonder if her hands on your skin mean the same thing to him as they did to your heart? Will he mind that you don't count the time that they had to prise your legs apart? Will you stay with him regardless if he does? There's no word for this. There's no word for this. There's no word for this. So I hate our fucking language. Our language about fucking. Every single term we have, every word is fucking lacking. Something with a slightly more positive message as my penultimate poem, before returning to the misery that is this planet. Okay, this is called Broken Glass. The mirror of your body shattered with the words "the fairest of them all" scrawled across it in red lipstick. You fell into her arms that night like a mouse dropped from a cat's jaws, a gift of sorts. She saw beneath your skin, asked, "What have you done?" And what have we all become, watching them set the bar across the windows to your soul and saying, "Shrink, sweetheart. Shrink and shut up, darling. Don't you worry your pretty little head about anything but being pretty." You can't go 5 steps in this city before you catch your own eye. There are enough mirrors in the world already. There's no need to die trying to become another. As your breathing slowed, calming, she gathered you up to her chest and called you beautiful. Said, "Here is what you must do. Weep the shards of glass from your eyes and grind them into powder. Mix it with paint and draw a self-portrait on the window of the last shop you felt inadequate in. Heat the shards of glass in your blood flow until they are molten, add them to the pieces you picked off your tongue, blow them into beads and wear them at your throat. See how they do not have a single sharp edge and all they reflect is the light. Stain the shards of glass in your heart and let them stay there, so when the sun rises within you, you drip rainbows onto the streets. Even people who fail to see how holy your body can be will wonder at the beauty of it. If you find you must be made of glass, raise yourself in celebration. Be a jar of fireflies opening, be a window. Know that if cracks appear in your skin, I will kiss them closed and paint stars over every scar. Your body is a constellation I want to wish on every night. In the morning she had taken down every mirror in the house. In their place she had written, you are not as fragile as they would like you to imagine. Even shattered and scattered, your words and your body are powerful. Give them the space they deserve. This last one kind of sums up a lot of what I've been feeling about things that I've been reading in the news recently, particularly about what's been going on in America. But it happens here too, happens in Canada, all of the places that you're told are fairylands that nothing terrible happens in. Turns out, particularly if you're a person of colour, if you encounter a police officer, you're probably not safe. So this is called ACAB ABC, and it's what I'm going to finish with. They've been learning their letters in the school across the street, and I'm awestruck by the power to mould minds when you teach. How just one adult reaching down to say I see you can be all you need to realise that it's okay to be you and not some smokescreen of a self. That kind of help can save a life, but choosing to survive is not today's class. Today they've been doing their ABCs, but sirs too stale to see they mean it when they say they learnt this differently at home. They got from A to B by way of C, through chants of ACAB in the streets, born in a time of no justice, no peace, where a young boy whose weapon is a packet of sweets is gunned down by a white man whose claims are believed by a white woman jury who refuse to see the blood on their hands. All the while cops are out on the beat, faces covered with helmets and armed to the teeth, badge numbers covered, capped boots on their feet. They are state-sanctioned gangs paid to prey on the weak and arrest anyone who speaks different. We are betraying children of colour every time we say the police are our protectors. We are betraying our students when we call them violent for breaking windows, when we call the police peacekeepers for stripping our sisters of their clothes. PTSD handed back with her keys when she leaves. They have stolen so many nights from us, wide-eyed and sleepless from the fear of them. It is a fear that lingers, triggered by the siren of the cop car, responding to the trigger of a man who could have been stopped if the cop had only stopped asking what she was wearing to find out what he looked like, who he was. So back to the lesson. It's not what he planned, the kids talk in slang that he can't understand. He's reminded again he's become an old man, telling disempowered children that life isn't fair. The pen's in his hand, but the blackboard is bare. His training didn't cover dissent and despair from kids who look up for guidance on what they should do and find the sky empty, the adults' eyes too. Well, my poems would normally end with an answer, a rallying call to be kinder, be smarter, be ready to stand and to fight for your rights, the mantras I chant just to keep me alive, and they matter. They matter, but they won't stop the pain. So I'll leave you instead with a list of names, lives we have lost to the will of the state, to remember in love what we lost through hate. Mark Duggan, Jessica Williams, Ian Tomlinson, Erica Morgan, Tamir Rice, Melissa Ventura, Trayvon Martin, Walter Scott, Petite Jasmine, Alton Sterling, Derivis Rogers, Philando Castile, Natalia Sotero, Ashley Sinclair, Hope Elferdink, David Joseph, Jean-Charles de Menezes, Dwayne Jones, Michael Brown. There's a sorrow too heavy to share out the weight, but we must remember in love those we lost through hate. Thank you.